This story happened 2 or 3 years ago when I was still a young preteen, so my memory of it isn't the best. Just outside of my neighborhood, there was a street leading 2 ways. One route was regularly used to get to my school, and the other led to an intersection with a CVS, which was most often used to get into downtown San Antonio. Past the CVS, there was a Korean school, which looked more like a house with a school sign, and an actual campus that I believe was a middle school. However, I did not go to this school. Across the street from the Korean school, there was an oddly placed house that nobody ever saw someone leave or enter. Even odder, it was shrouded in very tall, dense bamboo forests. Well, my brother and I, being curious preteens, were nearly infatuated with bamboo sticks, as they were portrayed in movies and cartoons. So, we would always collect the dead sticks that had fallen from the forest onto the sidewalk. One day, the pickings on the sidewalk were just broken sticks. So, my brother and I did something that was honestly stupid. We walked into the slim entrance between the forests and into the house. Around the house was trash cluttered all around, and if I recall correctly, 2 broken vehicles that looked like they had been there for a while. We knocked on the door, heard some barking, and were about to leave after a minute, when an elderly, sweet-looking lady came out. My brother and I did not expect this, and were trying our best to explain how we wanted to go into the forest and pick out some bamboo sticks for ourselves to use for fighting, almost like picking out a Christmas tree. She actually obliged, but I think told us she didn't want us to go in alone because there were bees or wasps inside there, and it was quite easy to get lost. So, she excused us for a moment while she went inside and got her shoes on. When she came out, she offered to give us a tour of the house, as it sat on quite a big chunk of oddly placed land surrounded by urban buildings. She took us around the back, and I believe there was some odd machine. I can't exactly recall what it was, but it did something useless and was made from makeshift parts. She explained that the previous owner was an inventor. She gave us some background on him and then told us about his son, who apparently committed suicide in the bathtub inside the house. We went to the very back where there was an old shack that looked as if it was used for storage some age ago, but was now blanketed with tall yellow grass. I honestly got a little bit spooked at this point, and I felt as if someone was going to ambush us from somewhere while she was giving us this tour. Thankfully, nobody did. She finally took us to the forest after passing by the broken-down cars. Most of it was just what it was made out to be, a literal forest of bamboo. I recall her telling us that all of the bamboo was connected to a single bamboo that was first planted, and that's how the forest was made. Whether or not this information is true, I do not know, but I found it interesting that she knew so much about it. As she told us, the previous owner, the inventor, had placed the forest there. There was an odd trail leading directly to the middle of the forest, and in the middle was a chair, a table, and a typewriter. Sadly, my brother and I could not go there, as she told us that was where all the bees had their hive, and she was not wrong. There were a lot of bees surrounding the typewriter. She did, however, give us a little story about how the inventor would just go there and type something up. We eventually walked out into a part of the forest in the front of the house. She helped us pick out 2 sticks and told us how to excavate them from the ground. Something unrelated that only made the situation weirder was when she told us that at one point she saw a dead body beside her property, I think by some storage lockers that were next to her house, but nobody believed her. We both got spooked from that point and ended up trying to leave, but not before she gave us a slip, saying she wanted us to come back and work for her during the summer. I feel as if she had something sinister planned. I honestly don't know what, but something seemed off about her. It was a Sunday morning in the suburbs, and my parents owned a farm that I enjoyed visiting because I could see my dog, Molly. She's a mutt, not a tiny dog by any means. At that time, I felt very safe around her and would often take her for walks in a nearby forest. The day started like any other. My dad and I got in the car, drove around for a while, and arrived at the farm. I immediately got out of the car and hugged Molly. My parents always got angry when I hugged her because I'd smell like her for the rest of the day. I put her leash on and asked my dad if I could take her for a walk. He always thought that we would just go down a road and back, but I always found it more interesting to take her to the forest. I always felt a certain kind of peace and relaxation there that was unmatched by anything else. So, we took a turn and headed to the forest. Usually when we got there, I'd take her leash off so she could explore on her own. Most of the time, I'd carve my name into the trees or look for anything interesting. I was playing baseball with some rocks and a wooden leg, presumably from an old table. Then I heard it. Molly was barking at something. This wasn't usual when we were in the forest. I thought it was a fox or some other animal, so I quickly grabbed the wooden leg like a weapon. I knew that if it was a fox, it wouldn't attack, but I had a sense of security while I was holding it. I called out, "Molly, Molly," but she just kept barking. This was very strange because she always came to me when I called her. I followed the sound of her barks and stumbled across a scene I'll never forget. There was a man, probably in his late 50s, half naked, carrying a large machete in one hand and holding moonshine in the other. This was the first time I had stumbled across someone in the woods, let alone someone half naked and carrying a big machete. He was completely ignoring Molly and hacking away at the ground for some reason. I didn't really know how to handle the situation. Even now, I have no idea how I would handle it. "Sir, are you okay?" I asked, in confusion. I don't think I understood the seriousness of the situation at the time. He turned around, revealing his face. He had some of the clearest blue eyes I have ever seen. To this day, I could see them so well because they were wide open. "Come here, boy. Look what I've dug up," he said. I was afraid that if I didn't listen to him, he would start chasing after me, and that was something I wanted to avoid at all costs. I got closer, but kept a good distance. I didn't see anything except for an empty hole. He returned to hitting the ground with his machete, occasionally taking sips from the bottle. I used this window of time to get my dog and started walking away slowly, as not to notify him that I was leaving. But then, I took one final glance at the man. His head was deep in the hole, and I was intrigued, so I kept looking. He finally got up from the ground. I was shocked when I saw him carrying a bone in his mouth. I have no idea what animal it belonged to, if it even did belong to an animal. I had seen enough and started sprinting with my dog. As we ran, I heard him laughing, and then I saw something flying from the corner of my eye. It was that damn machete. I heard him yell, "Damn it!" This made me run even faster. I know the forest very well, so I wasn't afraid of getting lost. I ripped through branches and bushes until I got out of that forest. But I didn't stop sprinting until I arrived at the garage, where my father was testing out lights on our tractor. I didn't tell him a single thing about the man, since I was afraid that he'd get angry and wouldn't allow me to walk Molly anymore. Needless to say, I never went to that forest alone ever again. This happened to my friend Sam and me 3 winters ago. We liked exploring nature and walking around outside, and our friends had recently introduced us to this beautiful place in Wisconsin that we had visited with them 3 or 4 times. Every time we had gone with them, it had been a pleasant trip. We walked around, got to see some beautiful views of Lake Michigan, sat in crooks of trees, and talked about books, games, and other things. It was great for storytelling. Sam and I are both 5'2" and 5'3" females. The first time she and I went alone, we went around dusk to take some pictures. This park is massive, with many bridges, footpaths, and winding roads throughout. We were walking over a bridge that sat against one of the roads with dense woods on either side. As we were crossing, a car drove by, and some guy leaned out the window and yelled, "Hey!" We were both startled and jumped, but dismissed them and continued walking across the bridge. Less than a minute later, the same car came back, driving in the other direction. This time, the driver's side window rolled down, and the driver, another male, called out, "Hey, ladies, come here." We picked up our pace. The car drove away, and right as we were about to reach the end of the bridge, we saw the car come at us again from the original direction. We then booked it up into the trees, up the hill, and we heard the car stop. The two men started yelling for us. We continued running and hid in the dark for 15 or so minutes until they left. We ran back to our car and left. You would think we would avoid the park after that. But once we had warmed up and had a good laugh over having been so scared, we went back to the park with our male friends a few times. Nothing even remotely scary happened. So, Sam and I decided to go back, just the two of us again. Sam and I often spent our afternoons and early evenings exploring the outdoors, hiking, geocaching, or just sitting outside in parks and talking. So we decided to add the park to our repertoire. We headed back around dusk again with a camera to take more pictures, especially since we hadn't gotten the shots we wanted the first time. Now, obviously looking back on this, we both feel incredibly foolish for having gone back alone, at the same time, and at the same place. But as I had said, we had gone a few more times with our male friends, and even when we had just one male with us, nothing had happened. Anyways, we went back, and we were about to walk over the same bridge when a car rolled by. And as you guessed, the window rolled down, and some guy just yelled out some random noise. This time, we didn't wait for them to drive around. We ducked into the woods and started walking back toward the pier. We figured we'd abandon the other photo spot and just explore the pier, take some lake shots. The way the pier is set up is that there is a long, thin road from the top of a giant grass hill, down and around a curve, and into the parking lot. The pier is at the end of the right side of the parking lot, about 200 yards away. If you walked from near the pier down the right side of the parking lot, there was a little bridge that led into a development with a tennis court next to the preserve. We began walking down the road to the lake. The car turned around in the parking lot and came back up the road. The car reached where we were, and it stopped. So we immediately turned and started walking down the hill. All of the windows rolled down, and we saw that there were 4 guys and 1 girl in the car. They yelled, "Hello," and Sam and I turned and waved. One of them said, "Oh hey, you're cute," and the others joined in. "Hey, yeah, wait for us." Mind you, we are 2 small females, but we were also super bundled up in large winter coats and hats. You could barely see any of our faces or our shapes, so they didn't really have a lot to base it on. We had been ignoring them, and we hear someone yell, "We're coming back for you," as they start driving up the hill. Sam and I decide not to take any chances and start running down the hill. We hear hooting and hollering and see them disappear over the top of the hill. We start running toward the bridge. Once you've gotten over the bridge to the left, there was a concrete deck with a drop-off to a ramp about 5 feet tall. If you got off the bridge and jumped down right away, you'd be at the bottom of the ramp and couldn't be seen from the other side, which is exactly what we did. We hear the car speed back down the hill, and 4 doors open and close as they all start screaming and laughing. Come here. Girls, we'll be nice. We just want to play. Most of them took off to the pier, but 2 of them stayed behind. We could make out bits and pieces of what they were saying. Where do you think they went? I don't know. We'll find them, etc. Sam and I were huddled and freaked out, and once it had been silent near the bridge for a while, we decided to peek out to see if the other 2 had also left so we could sneak back up the hill or make a break for it somewhere else. We peeked over, and there was a guy on the other end of the bridge, and he clearly saw us. Over here. He screamed to his buddies and started running across the bridge to us. We took off toward the development, running around the side of the tennis court while being chased by 3 of the guys. Only one of them was very close, about 30 feet, but the rest were catching up faster than we would have liked. We took a quick turn between 2 houses in the subdivision, and we luckily never saw them from that point on. We got back to our car by walking through the forest preserve incredibly slowly, dashing across roads, terrified out of our minds. We left that night and called our friends we normally went to the preserve with from then on out. They insisted on accompanying us anytime we went there.